We do know statistically, and this has been well studied, that 85 to 95%, depending on what statistics you look at, but no less than 85% of all chronic conditions are due to lifestyle. And the thing is, this isn't our fault that things are going awry with our hormones. It's the world that we live in. And that's the big piece that conventional medicine misses. It's not like a condition or a symptom just starts the day you get a diagnosis, right? Endometriosis isn't like, oh, it started the day my doctor finally figured it out. Even things that are taken for granted, like period pain or irregular cycles, those are considered just normal for being a woman. I like to say in my book, Hormone Intelligence, being a woman is not a diagnosis. Like you can't just blame everything on the fact that we're women. But the bigger picture where I like to connect the dots is that 85 to 95% of lifestyle factors, right? And what are those and how do those contribute to what we experience in our female bodies, particularly once we hit puberty all the way through menopause?
Hi, I'm Kelly Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast, a lifestyle podcast where we'll talk about wellness, motherhood, and some really exciting things in between. My goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through my conversations with our experts and guests, I hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos. Welcome back, everybody, to the Balancing Chaos podcast, where we dive deep into topics that empower and inspire us to lead healthier, more fulfilling lives. And today, I have the privilege of hosting a true trailblazer and one of the women I admire most in this space, Dr. Aviva Romm. At the age of 15, Dr. Romm embarked on a transformative journey that led her from the bustling streets of Queens to the serene landscapes of Western Massachusetts, where her passion for pre-medicine was ignited. Her unconventional path, guided by a deep connection to nature and a commitment to holistic wellness, set her on a trajectory that would truly redefine women's healthcare. As a midwife and an herbalist, on top of being a doctor, Dr. Romm spent over 2 decades caring for women, children, and families from all walks of life. Her experiences, coupled with her relentless pursuit of knowledge, have led her to become a trusted author, educator, and leader in natural medicine. And today, Dr. Romm continues to challenge the status quo, advocating for a more compassionate, integrative approach to healthcare. Her insights into topics like herbal medicine, nutrition, and holistic wellness have touched the lives of thousands of women, sparking a true women's health revolution. Welcome to the show, Dr. Romm.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me, and thank you for that amazing bio introduction.
Thank
So
you for
lovely.
being here. Truly.
Oh, yeah, it's a pleasure.
Every word. You are so inspirational. You have so much incredible knowledge. And I think that honestly, out of all, just to give you a little background on me, I've been through it with my hormones, and I have gone through so many different imbalances where it was like low estrogen, like hypothyroid, all of these different things. And I truly think that your books were the first ones that ever showed me that there was a real connection, not only between all of our systems, but also with the mind and the body, and like how stressed I was and the things that I was believing about myself, how that impacts the way that my physical body is functioning. And I just love that. And so I feel like that's a really good place for us to start. I would love to hear, or for our audience rather, to hear more of that philosophy, because I feel like it's not talked about enough.
Yeah. So, in convention, first of all, again, thank you. Such beautiful words. And I'm honored to be part of your journey. And it's so lovely as a woman to have the reflection back of another woman who's, in the space and doing powerful work. So I really appreciate that. Yes, thank you. And congratulations on the things that you have done to really get your health and hormones where you want them to be. That's a big journey too.
Thank you.
So, okay. When we look at the lens of women's health through conventional medicine, whether this is just like normal variations in our menstrual cycle, all the way to things like PCOS, endometriosis, painful periods, fertility problems, you name it, we're basically told one of a few things, or unfortunately, all of the above. Yeah. We just don't know. It's bad genes. It's bad luck. Or in a myriad of ways, we are shamed into somehow believing it's our fault. Like, oh, if you were just less stressed, if you would just lose the weight, if you would just do this or do that. And what's really missing from conventional medicine is this understanding that a condition, one, isn't just random bad luck. Yes, people can have genetic inheritances, that's for sure. And that is unfortunate. I wouldn't call it bad luck. It's our lives, right? We wouldn't call our lives bad luck.
Right.
It's unfortunate when that happens. But we do know statistically, and this has been well studied, that 85 to 95%, depending on what statistics you look at, but no less than 85% of all chronic conditions are due to lifestyle. And the thing is, this isn't our fault that things are going awry with our hormones. It's the world that we live in.
Yeah.
And that's the big piece that conventional medicine misses. It's not like a condition or a symptom just starts the day you get a diagnosis, right? Endometriosis isn't like, oh, it started the day my doctor finally figured it out. And even things that are taken for granted, like period pain or irregular cycles, those are considered just normal for being a woman. I like to say in my book,
Yes.
Hormone Intelligence, being a woman is not a diagnosis. Like you can't just blame everything on the fact that we're women.
Mm.
But the bigger picture where I like to connect the dots is that 85 to 95% of lifestyle factors, right? And what are those and how do those contribute to what we experience in our female bodies, particularly once we hit puberty all the way through menopause? And those have to do with things like endocrine disruptors that we are bombarded with in our water bottles, in our nonstick pans, in our plastic storage containers, in our cosmetics that we put on, our shampoo, our lotion, all the things that we're using, our household products, and the things that women are far more exposed to than men. Even things like receipts or airline tickets, that women are more likely to be handling airline tickets as not flight attendants, but the people who check you in
Mm.
or the women who are checking you out at the grocery store. These things contain PFAS. These are forever chemicals that we know affect our menstrual cycles, can lead to PCOS, endometriosis, fertility problems, miscarriages. So, like, that's just one piece of it. And then there's
Right.
gut health and our nutrition and the stress levels that it's not enough to just tell a woman to stress less. I mean, we all want to stress less, but so many women are holding it down at work and then they're holding it down at their, other job, which is being mom or taking care of the household. There's a wide variety of socioeconomic stressors that women are facing. So this is the landscape that
Yeah.
I really encourage women to look at. And for me, like one of the key take home points that I want women to really understand is that your body's not broken, you're not a lemon, and it's not your fault. And there are things that have like kind of compounded over the courses of our lives that can be really challenging to reverse. But so much of this is reversible and it's work.
Yeah.
But once you get used to it and like make it a lifestyle, it's not that hard.
So true. It's so true. And I love that you brought all of those little individual pieces up, whether again, it's like receipts or gut health or nutrition, because they all play a role. And one of the things that I thought was so fascinating at the beginning of your book, Hormone Intelligence, you go through a list of all of these different conditions, again, like
Mhm.
endometriosis, PCOS, hypothyroidism, whatever it may be, and what the statistic is of the population that will experience that
Yes, it's
within
staggering and
their
shocking, isn't it?
it is so shocking. Like, I think it was like one in, or I think you said like nine, to correct me if I'm wrong, like something like 85 or 90% of women will experience a hormonal imbalance at one point in their life. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's not even so much a hormonal imbalance. It's more like 80, at least 80% of women will experience a hormonal problem in her life, right? Like an imbalance may be like, oh, I'm not feeling great around my
Right.
period. I'm like a little moody, but like will actually have something that could be diagnosable. Period pain, skipped periods,
Mm.
irregular periods, PMS, those things.
Right.
Or endometriosis or PCOS or hypothyroidism, the list goes on.
Right. So when we think about those statistics and how they've changed over the last, I don't know, let's say 50 years or
Yeah.
so, 50 to 100 years, even the whole idea of like infertility and those numbers rising. When we think about those numbers, I know that like, you mentioned certain endocrine disruptors, but that's not the whole picture. Do you think that as a society, we're more stressed, we're eating worse food, all of those different things? Or is it just um is it a combination of all the things?
Well, it's yes and, right? It is
Yeah.
definitely a combination of all of them. It could be any one factor.
Uh-huh.
One could eat a really healthy diet and have a healthy gut microbiome and go through a period of intense stress that could disrupt everything else, right? Because we know that our hormones are affected by our sleep, our hormones are affected by our gut, and high levels of stress can affect those things.
Uh-huh.
We do know that the nutritional quality of our food and just our soil, like the fundamental places that our food is grown, has gone down. So an orange today has less vitamin C than when, let's say, my grandmother ate an orange
Right.
50 or 60 years ago. And our soil is depleted. Most women go into pregnancy, for example, low or deficient in about 12 different nutrients, and we're just not getting them from our soil. Our microbiome is disrupted. As women, by the time we're 20 years old, we've had on average 18 rounds of antibiotics. And then in our 20s, we often get as many as 10 more rounds, things like urinary tract infections that are more common in our 20s.
Right.
So those things disrupt our gut tremendously. So, and then all of these different factors interact.
Yeah.
So, yes. And, what I like to talk about is this concept of an evolutionary mismatch. Think of it as the straw that breaks the camel's back, or like, in that Mr. Peanut game, like you put the one thing in and it all tips over. Now I'm dating myself, but, anything that just kind of tips the scale. And what's happened now is that we have so many of these factors at once
Right.
that our bodies, our hormones, our livers, our thyroids, our ovaries, on an evolutionary basis, so many changes have happened in the last like 50, 60 years with the advent of chemicals in our environment, changes in our food, much higher levels of stress. And look, like my grandmother lived through the Depression. That is stressful.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, she wasn't living through the Depression and having to keep up with social media and 24/7 news cycles and crises all over the world. I mean, there's just the amount of stress that we're managing
I love
and
that you
the
mentioned that.
frequency and intensity. It's like really high.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just sort of tipped the scale in such a fast time frame
Hmm.
that what's our normal evolutionary function of our ovaries, our thyroids, etc., our liver detoxification capacity is overwhelmed. It
Right.
hasn't had a chance to catch up.
That makes so much sense. And a big part of the reason that I love that you mentioned that is because um so again, going back to my story, my in even through the last couple of years I've been dealing with hormonal issues. I had two pregnancy losses, and my
Oh,
father-in-law,
sorry.
that's okay. We've got
Yeah.
one on the way.
Well,
So
thank you for sharing it out loud. First of all, it's brave and
yeah.
important. And you do. You showed me your belly right when we started. So it's
I'm very excited, and it was a long road to get here, and it was a very emotional road to get here.
Mhm.
And I don't want to like put that piece aside, but one of the things that my father-in-law had mentioned to me, because he's a fertility specialist, an
Oh,
infertility
wow.
specialist, which is cool, is that back in the Holocaust, there was like they were saying that like the miscarriage rates were not higher because of all of the stress that those women were under. But then it's like you mentioned your grandma and the depression. It's like they weren't also dealing with all of these other factors of poor nutrition, other forms of stress, endocrine disruptors. It was like, yes, that was
Yeah.
a very
I also
stressful
think the
situation. But
fertility rate, the miscarriage rate wasn't higher, but the fertility rate went down just because of something called hypothalamic amenorrhea. Women were starving and under such high levels of stress that
right.
it was harder to get pregnant.
Right. But yes, exactly. But like versus staying pregnant, which is it's just
Yes.
very interesting conversation. And so with all of that being said, I want to shift gears a little bit because before we got on, I was telling you about the first book that I really got into when I was digging into your, this was probably like, gosh, 6-ish years ago.
Hmm.
10 years ago, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And when I went in, I was told, hey, you have hypothyroid, you're going to take this medication. See ya later. And this is before I had
Yeah.
done any of my own research. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. At least I have an answer as to
Yeah,
why
at
I'm,
least you got a diagnosis. It takes women years sometimes to get a diagnosis. So that's pretty impressive.
yeah, I went to many doctors. And so
Mm.
I got a diagnosis. I go home with the medication, and it wasn't until reading your book that I had a better understanding of the fact that like all of these systems are very interconnected.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm not somebody with autoimmune hypothyroid. I just have normal run-of-the-mill hypothyroid. I also
Hmm.
am somebody who struggled really bad with an eating disorder for
Hmm.
the better part of a decade. And
Yeah.
I did not recognize until reading that that level of stress that I was putting my body under obviously is going to impact how my thyroid is functioning, how
Yeah.
my metabolic rate is functioning. And so, for our listeners who are kind of just getting into this, can you explain that adrenal thyroid and even maybe take it one step further to like the ovaries, that whole kind of cascade and connection?
Yes.
Okay.
So these different systems, so you have your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, and the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. So
Mhm.
hypothalamus and pituitary are these two organs in the brain. They're endocrine organs, meaning they're producing hormones, and they're producing hormones that tell your ovaries, your thyroid, or your adrenals to produce or to roll back the production of the hormones that stimulate those glands. And our bodies are incredibly wise, right? On an evolutionary basis, we have these incredible mechanisms that protect us. And when those mechanisms are working really well, they turn on when we need them and they turn off pretty quickly when we don't need them. But in our modern world, there are a lot of factors that are either causing those systems to overproduce or underproduce hormones. And sometimes they've been overproducing for a while, like in the adrenals. And then the brain is like, oops, we can't have her body keep doing this because it's going to cause damage. So with the adrenals, their primary role, well, the adrenals have multiple roles because there's actually three layers of the adrenals. But what we're typically talking about when we're talking about stress is the adrenal cortex.
Mhm.
Cortex just means bark. It's the outer layer of the three layers of the adrenals. And that cortex is where cortisol is produced. And cortisol, we think of as a stress hormone, but it's an incredibly important anti-inflammatory, immune protectant. It just has so many functions in the body. But when we're chronically overproducing it because our stress response is overstimulated or our inflammatory response is overstimulated, that can tell your brain that essentially you're in danger because the brain doesn't really interpret danger. It doesn't really interpret the danger from inflammation or a bill that you get that stresses you out or something you read in the news that makes you not sleep. Your body's like, danger is danger is danger. So, one of the things that can happen is that cortisol hijacks, kind of blocks the impact of thyroid hormone in the body,
Hmm.
and it can block the effects of the ovaries to ovulate and produce the hormones that we need. The reason your body's doing that is like, well, if she's in danger, maybe now is not the best time for her to be having really high metabolism because maybe the danger is a famine is coming. So let's
Yeah.
roll back her thyroid function a little. If she's in danger, probably not a great time to
Have a
get
baby.
pregnant. So let's roll back her ovarian function a little. So that's how the cortisol and adrenals can impact things. But the thyroid also has kind of this executive manager function too. So, as you mentioned, thyroid and metabolism. Metabolism is essentially the rate at which we burn energy and it
Okay.
fuels all of our functions. So, metabolism is happening in our mitochondria. But a lot of that metabolic function is also being triggered by your thyroid. So, think about it this way. Imagine that you're kind of on a budget because you overspent your bank account a little bit. You went on this great shopping trip when you were in Paris, and now you're like, oops, okay. Pretend that your thyroid, pretend that your hypothalamus and your pituitary are kind of like your uh, your financial planner and your bank account. So your financial planner is like, hey, Kelly, you better hold off on spending a little bit right now while you save, or your bank account has an automatic override. Like you just can't draft out past a certain amount of money. So when your brain or your inflammation or any other function in your body is like, whoa, she is overspending beyond her means. She's using up more financial energy or caloric energy or energy in general
Hmm.
than she has. Your thyroid function is going to slow down. With that, your thyroid is going to tell your ovaries, or your brain is going to tell your ovaries, hey, she doesn't really have enough energy right now. And ovulation is a pretty expensive proposition when it comes to spending energy. So we're going to hold off on ovulation right now. And so then you
Right.
can have anovulatory periods, hypothalamic amenorrhea, fertility challenges, and your thyroid function goes down. Your metabolism goes down too. So it's why we gain weight when we have slow thyroid function. Your body isn't warming itself up as well. So we often feel chilly and cold. We just don't have as much energy. So we might feel depressed. So you can start to see like this whole interrelated picture, and it all has to come down to our bodies protecting us. So in your case, it may have been that you didn't develop autoimmune hypothyroid, but years of struggling with getting enough energy into your body because of a
Right.
disordered eating led your thyroid to basically say another metaphor I love for thyroid is when there's an energy crisis, and there's like rolling blackouts, or we have to all turn our thermostat down to save energy.
Right.
It's like your body got the message that it needed to turn down the thermostat. And it may have just been doing it for so long and for so hard that it kind of burnt itself out a bit. And that's why you needed to add in that thyroid hormone for your body to go,
Right.
okay, we need to add the energy back in somehow. And that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like when people know that type of cascade and they can, at least when I figured that out by reading books and researching and doing those types of things, it gave me more motivation to want to actually manage the stress in a different way,
Yeah.
and to do things differently rather than just be on a medication. And I like full transparency to my audience. I think a lot of them know this, but like I'm still on a low dose of thyroid medication. I probably will be for the rest of my life, but
Yeah.
it's lower
That's a
than
good
it
thing
was
when you
when
get it
the,
right. You need it.
yeah, exactly. When I first started, it's lower. And that's because of a variety of different things, supplements,
Mhm.
diet changes, not having an eating disorder, like all of these different things that have shifted in my life.
I would never say that there are advantages to getting a diagnosis, whether it's PCOS or hypothyroid or any of it.
Right.
But often what does happen is you get these diagnoses in your 20s, 30s, even early 40s or mid 40s when you still have decades of life ahead. And sometimes these wake up calls, even though
Yes.
it's not what you would want to have happen, it's actually an opportunity to look at these bigger picture things that most people don't ever look at. And so they end up in their 50s and 60s and 70s with diabetes and heart disease and dementia. So,
Mm.
I really try to encourage my patients and my online community, like, I know this isn't what you want. And I
Right.
know that you need to process that you have this condition. And when you get to the other side, this is actually like if you didn't know, right, you might not have optimized your thyroid function
Right.
or your nutrition or anything for having a healthy pregnancy.
Absolutely. And I think that my career trajectory would look completely different. Like when I
Yes,
first
that
found this
too.
out, I was like in a corporate job, and like now I get to use this as a way to help other people who are going through something similar, um, in recognizing like that just because you get, like you said, like even like the diagnosis from a doctor and you're told, okay, this is the medication, like there's more that you can do. There's more
Mhm.
that you can shift and change about your life. And when you do that, it's actually a really empowering thing that you feel like you can take
Absolutely.
control of your health.
Hi, I'm Kelly Namiro, your host, certified holistic hormone coach, and Pilates instructor for the WBK method. You can consider me your guide in helping you curate the very best version of yourself from the inside out. feeling physically better by optimizing your hormones, to feeling mentally and emotionally better by creating a more deep and grounded connection with yourself. I get questions all the time in my DMs about things like, what supplements should I be taking for my menopause symptoms? Or is it normal that I'm always exhausted? My doctor said that's what happens as I get older. Or maybe I gained 20 pounds in the last couple of years and I have no idea how to lose it. And even I'm chronically bloated and I've tried every elimination diet. Please help. But here's the thing. There are no quick fixes out there. Until you know the root cause of what's going on in your body and you use precision supplementation, a targeted diet, and mindset and lifestyle changes that are specific to your unique circumstances and lab values, you're never going to be able to heal. Throwing just random supplements that make all these promises or a restrictive diet and a weight issue is never going to work because it's not focused on what's going on internally with you. And often we can make the problem worse when we do these things. And that's why I've created the WBK Lab Review Package. In this package, you'll receive lab kits and a custom lab form based on your symptoms and health history. Once you've completed the saliva kit for your adrenals, the stool kit for your gut health, and the blood tests for your hormones and other health markers, we'll sit down together and create a customized plan that will help you balance your hormones in a holistic way so that you can lose weight, have more energy, maintain a balanced mood, and achieve the results that you've been wanting. This year, it is time to get the results that you've been dreaming of because you're targeting your unique system. If you're ready to experience more energy, comfort, confidence in your body, and relief from those nagging symptoms that have been bringing you down, I would love to support you in doing just that. This program includes a one-on-one call between you and me, all of the labs needed to create your customized protocol, and a PDF with your unique plan that you'll be following going forward so that you can take your time in implementing your new diet, supplements, and lifestyle changes. To learn more about this, head to the link in the show notes or go to wellnessbykelly.com to learn more about the WBK Lab Review.
So my question from there would be, when it comes down to it, and you've seen, thousands and thousands of women come through, whether it's your practice or reading your books or talking to people in your online community, when it comes down to it, when we think about the way that you just described that kind of HPA hypothalamic kind of cascade, do you feel like for a lot of women that they can come back to working on the stress piece, and the stress is a big cause of whether, again, like it's stress from restriction, stress from your bills, stress from your job, stress from overexercising, because there's many forms of stress, but is that a big root cause piece for most people to come back to work on?
I think so. And, when you think about it, stress affects our microbiome. So we could have dysbiosis and change our diets all day long, but if we're still stressed, it's still going to be affecting our microbiome. I think fundamentally what I find really interesting too about stress, and I know this for myself too, is like, what's the first thing that happens when we're super stressed out? Our diet goes out the window a little bit because we want comfort foods. We're like, screw it. I'm not going to exercise today because I just don't have the motivation. So it's like the healthy habits that we want to have to support ourselves, like the healthy ways of living that are self-nourishing, are often the first thing to go. So not only we are having the stress, but we're not buffering it.
Right.
So absolutely. And I really think it's important not to blame ourselves for stress. The stress is part of the world we live in.
Yeah.
But I really think of it as an act of rebellion to say, okay, unless you have a weekend shift where you have to work weekends, you're a nurse or a pilot or whatever, like sacrosanct times on the weekends, off from electronics, off from work, evenings, like know what your hit pause time is. Even in the mornings, having a little bit of a slower start in the morning, just the little ways that we can say, I'm not having it. I'm taking back control of my life and my time. I was talking with my husband this morning because, we, like you, we work from home, we're entrepreneurs. It's a very intense lifestyle. I'm managing a lot of things. And we've been saying to each other, oh, let's have a morning meeting Monday through Friday to make sure that we are aligned on all the work things we need to do and get all the things done. And I woke up this morning and I said, babe, what if we totally reframe this? What if we had a morning meeting and we said, how are we going to protect our health and our lifestyle today while we're getting the work done? He looked at me, he's like, oh, I like that. It was just like a complete reframe. And we can do that. Look, I've been a medical resident as a mom of 4 teens and tweens. I know how hard we can work. I was raised
Yeah.
by a single mom, who was raising two kids. I've seen it. And it's hard. And I don't want to sound like, oh, it's easy, just carve out the time for yourself. But we have to radically do it, whether it is taking your lunch outside for, or going to like sit in front
Yeah.
of a window for 15 minutes at your corporate job, saying 15 minutes in the morning, I'm actually going to slow sip my tea or slow sip my coffee in some sunlight, even if it's
Yeah.
like midwinter, all these little things that we take that 5 minute extra time in the shower to just like do the loofah or
Yeah.
do the essential oils, the little ways that we can add in, because it makes the other habits a little bit easier to keep up with, right? You're not binging on the sugar or staying up too late, doom scrolling and all those things.
Right. You're not going to the coping mechanisms because you're less stressed and you don't need to.
Yeah,
you have an article, and I think that this is also in your book, but that I really loved, all about self-connection, because I think that being in the fast-paced world that we live in, it's really easy to lose that with ourselves.
absolutely.
We get
Oh my
this.
God, like I haven't posted on my social media in 6 days. And it's pathetic that I even know that. But right now I'm in between socials people and I'm doing all of my own socials.
Yeah.
And so like I'm either pushing myself to post or I'm beating myself up and worrying about not. It's like, and that's just like a trivial thing. I mean,
Yep.
the levels of stressors that people are facing in the world are
Yeah.
so intense. Racism, sexism, genderism, ageism, all those things intersectionally, all of it. It's so hard right now to just be
A human.
a woman and hold it all
Yeah.
down.
100%. And like, I feel you so much on even the social media thing. It feels like a game that you have to play to stay relevant, but like none of us
Yes.
really want to be playing it,
Yes.
but it's so stressful. And I just feel like when I think about I'll link the article that I'm talking about and obviously your book in the show notes, but the whole point was like, if you with yourself and you can take 3 minutes and you can do this exercise where you're like listening to your body, or there was another piece of advice that was like,
Yes.
um, permission to pause, where you take 15 minutes a day and you do some activity that you're pausing and reconnecting with yourself. Like, those I think are such tangible, manageable things that women can do, because it's not like you're telling them like, oh, go on this retreat and like for a whole week and like that's how you come back
No,
to
I
yourself.
wish. I would
Or
love that too. Yeah, but like I had a pretty intense morning, right? And while we're
yeah.
talking now, it's 3 in the afternoon my time. So before we hopped on, I just took 15 minutes and I
Yeah.
walked around my garden, pulled a few weeds, actually some dirt under my fingernails, but I pulled a few weeds and just like, okay. Or last night, I was just kind of stressed about something with work, and my husband was like, I was like, babe, let it go. It's like 7 o'clock. I don't want to talk about this right now. And I was like, I just need to go for like a little car ride. And I did. I just went for like 20 minutes. I just didn't even have music. I had the windows down because it was nice and warm. I saw 3 deer jump across the road. I was like, this is so nice. Just a little like moment to myself out of the house.
Right.
So important as moms. Oh my gosh. It's like we could feel so guilty. I had a patient, she had 5 boys, 13 and under,
Ooh.
and I had to give her permission to pause.
Yeah.
And she would go either in the closet or lock herself in the bathroom. I'm like, babe, whatever you got to do to get time alone, like
Yeah.
you can just say I'm in the bathroom or I'm getting dressed. Like kids don't need to know. They're not going to barge in. The boys
Yeah.
aren't going to barge in at least. But just whatever way we can take that time.
100%. And I think that the more that you do it, and it, like you said, in those like little manageable micro ways, like 15 minutes or
Yeah.
going into the garden and picking, the more that you can do that in those tiny ways, the more that you come back to yourself and realize, hey, like this is actually something that makes me feel better or more grounded
Yes.
or less anxious.
Yes.
Um,
And then when you feel like for me, the touchstone is to try to remember that feeling
yes.
and anchor that feeling so that that becomes my baseline to try to actually live more of my life within. And when I'm getting pulled out and strung out of it, and that happens to me too, like
Yeah.
just, you spin out, it's that touchstone of like, okay, actually, I don't like feeling this other way.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to feel that way? And it's a constant, right? Like a
Push pull.
recalibration.
Absolutely. I even feel like since, I started this whole journey on my health and hormones, 8 or so years ago, it's like I feel like the baseline used to be anxious, stressed, overwhelmed. And I didn't know a difference. I didn't know. But the second that you start doing these things to slow down, then something else starts to become your baseline. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I just invite so like all the women listening here to try to find, because I feel like so many of us live in that baseline of like, oh, anxious,
Yes.
overwhelmed is my normal.
Yeah. I've been
Um,
rereading Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic,
mhm.
and she talks about the ways that we habitually create drama to
Yes.
self-sabotage um, our good intentions for whatever it is, whether it's creating something or just taking care of ourselves. And I definitely also know that pattern. So I've
Yeah.
been trying to look for that tendency more in my life, and the ways that I'll like insidiously create some situation that keeps me from doing the Pilates online or whatever it is, you know? So
Yeah.
looking at the ways as women that we don't believe that we deserve to take care of ourselves and how we get in our own way with that, or also not expecting it and setting it as a pattern for our partners and our children. I sometimes say to moms who are in my practice who are coming to me for hormone imbalance, adrenal, thyroid,
Yeah.
whatever it is, um, period problems, all the things, or even autoimmune conditions. They're like, well, I can't take time for self-care because of my kids. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, let me reframe this for you. What do you want as a model for your children? Like, what do you want as a model for your daughters? Do you want them to grow up and be like, motherhood
And
and career means I can't take, or do you want your sons to learn that? Like, that's what
yeah,
you do as a partner. So sometimes I have
100%.
to kind of trick women into thinking about it, how they're doing it for their kids, like as a model. But we
A
really have to
hundred
think
percent.
about that.
100%. And I think that like when you put it that way, it's like so eye-opening, but we get stuck in those limiting beliefs. It's just such a testament to the fact that our thoughts and beliefs create our actions, which then impact how we feel in our
Yes.
physical
And it
bodies.
happens to me too, just for the record. I mean,
Yeah,
I live a really good life. I've been very fortunate to have excellent health, and I'm not immune to the stresses and the pressures and
right.
the things either. It's like it is a something we have to continue to remind ourselves, or at least most of us do, who don't have the privilege of like not having a job or whatever, in a world that is constantly demanding our attention.
Yeah, 100%. So one thing I want to go back to that you've brought up a few times in our conversation is this idea of gut health, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's like the idea of like, being on rounds and rounds of antibiotics, that was definitely me as a kid, or
Me too.
the yeah, I just don't I didn't know any better.
I used to throw them in the toilet. It's so weird. I would pretend to take it and then I would spit it out or throw it in the toilet and tell my mom I took it because I didn't like it. I was really scared of doctors and I didn't
Yeah,
like it. So it's really weird. I did get antibiotics as a kid, but I just would spit them out
good for
without worrying.
you.
I'm glad in retrospect it was kind of bizarre at the time, but
It's like your body like intuitively knew something deeper
something like
at
that
that time.
bubblegum taste. I was like, what?
No. Um, so talk to us a little bit about the impact of our gut on our hormones.
Mhm.
What is that connection? And like what you were mentioning before, like if somebody does have a UTI or something like that coming from your, herbalist mode, is there another option?
Okay, so gut on hormones.
Yeah.
There are multiple ways that our gut impacts our hormone health. So, one is that we have an entirely unique branch, if you will, of our gut microbiome called the estrobolome. It
Mhm.
literally is dedicated to metabolizing and helping us to excrete harmful estrogens and excess estrogens and reabsorb the estrogens that we want to keep circulating in our body so we have enough estrogen. So just like take that in for a minute. You have a whole department just for estrogen. So ways that that gets disrupted are the recurrent antibiotics, and even one round of antibiotics can disrupt it. But look, if you need the antibiotic, you got to take it right, and then there are
Right.
ways you can repair that. environmental endocrine disruptors actually can damage the microbiome, chronic inflammation, ultra processed foods, bad fats, and stress. These are just some of the myriad ways. Blood sugar imbalances.
Mm.
When we have high blood sugar, that feeds the less friendly gut flora, and those suppress the really good ones that we want dialed up and doing their best for us. So there are a lot of different ways. All the things we've talked about are kind of cyclic and interrelated, like this, nice big
Yeah.
Venn diagram of connections. So we really want to make sure that we're nourishing our microbiome with lacto-fermented foods. I eat some form of pickled something pretty much every day. It could be yogurt, it can be cottage cheese with probiotic, like a lacto-fermented cottage cheese. My favorite, I'm not a huge dairy fan for meat. My personal body as a menopausal woman, not my optimal.
Yeah.
But I pretty much eat sauerkraut or some lacto fermented pickles or kimchi or miso daily. I love them. I'm the pickles person anyway. Love that sour
Yeah.
food. But those are great for nourishing your microbiome. Eating a good 8 to 10 servings of a variety of multicolored vegetables and some fruits every day. And that sounds like a lot. People hear that and like, oh my God, I could never do that. But if you think about it, you have maybe scrambled eggs and some spinach on the side for breakfast. That's a serving right there. You can make it a double portion, and that's 2 servings right there.
Right.
Have a big salad for lunch, like a couple of cups of fresh lettuces, good healthy romaine or green leaf or red leaf. That's 2 or 3 servings right there. Add a half cucumber, quarter of a red pepper. You're quickly adding it up. Have some broccoli and half a sweet potato for dinner. You've gotten your 8 to 10 servings. So it's not crazy hard. Legumes are really healthy for the microbiome. There's kind of like so many things that you can nourish yourself with good food that are great for your microbiome. But the plant-based foods, and I'm very much, like get your protein how you like to, whether that's fish, chicken, red meat, or vegetarian. But however you eat, a plant-centric or plant-forward diet is going to really nourish that estrobolome and the gut health in general. Reducing stress, we've talked about avoiding ultra processed foods, critically important. Those are some of the top things that you could do for your gut.
Amazing. I love those
And
tips. And there's things
yes,
that, yeah, like everyone can start to
everyone can do that. And to your question, yes, there are alternatives. If you're pregnant and you have a urinary tract infection, unless you are working with someone, not to be sound egotistical, but like me, who has 40 years of working in women's health with herbs and as an MD, you're not going to find too many of us out there. I do have protocols that I have used with one-on-one care with pregnant mamas who
Right.
are getting recurrent urinary tract infections and don't want to keep taking antibiotics during pregnancy. But generally, if you have a UTI in pregnancy, you do need to take the antibiotic because they can progress to kidney infections. And if you have a complicated urinary infection where you do have a kidney infection, then you do need an antibiotic. But for common urinary infections, yes, there are herbs that you can use for prevention and also for treatment in the early stages. And as long as things are clearing up in 24 to 48 hours, you're not running a fever, having pain, then you can effectively do that. And I have that kind of information over on my website and in my books.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, it's so funny because like even if I think about my son, I have 2 sons, and one of them, when he got his very first ear infection, like my first initial reaction was like, I don't want to put him on antibiotics. And the pediatrician's like, you absolutely have to, like, this is like, otherwise it's going to get worse and all the things. And then, again, my father-in-law is not a pediatrician, but he's a doctor. And he's like, you don't have to, like, just see if things get worse. And we did, and it got better and everything was fine. And
and the thing is, like, doctors are so reflexive about just doing the antibiotic, but there are actually guidelines for this. Like the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, which we now all know of since COVID, right? Has guidelines for when to watch and wait, when to treat different age ranges. And I have a whole course on this. A lot of people don't know this, but I do full pediatrics and women's health and gynecology and maternal health. But I have an entire course called Healthy All Year, which is just how to support your kids' immunity naturally.
Oh, I love that.
And also all the natural things you can do for things like cough, earaches, ear infections, gut health issues, allergies, all the things. So
yeah.
It's there on my
I need
website.
that. I'm going to
I
take
will give
that.
that to you. Just
Thank you.
email me and I will gift that to you.
You're so sweet. I love that. I think that that's like, we could all use more of that because anytime you go to like, again, a Western pediatrician, the first response is, okay,
Yeah.
antibiotics.
And
It's
there is
like,
my book, Naturally Healthy Babies and
yeah.
Children, which came out in like 1994. But like
Ah,
all the natural medicine stuff is still totally relevant. The
relevant.
course is much more expanded, and obviously it's more recent than 1994, but maybe that was even earlier than 94. But it's been around a while.
I love that. So when you think about just like to wrap this conversation of the
Yeah.
gut health in a bow, when we think about the estrobolome, as you mentioned, and like how that is our way of detoxifying, excess toxic bad estrogens. When
Mhm.
we think about that, if your estrobolome is imbalanced, and I don't know if that's the right way, I'm saying it the right way,
Yeah.
but if it is, if that's the case, then does that mean that there's a bigger likelihood for more estrogen dominant type imbalances or
Yes.
diagnoses like
Yes. And it's very hard
endometriosis?
to know if your estrobolome is imbalanced per
Ah,
se, because there's not really a test that you can look at and say, oh, these are the organisms that make up your estrobolome
sure.
and they're elevated or low or whatever. But we do know, and this is really interesting data. Again, I am not suggesting anyone be a vegan or a vegetarian. If that's a path you want to take, great. But we do know that vegetarians actually have healthier estrogen balance on the whole. And the
Mm,
studies have shown over and over and over that we're converting more of the estrogens to forms that we can excrete because we have better microbiome that is producing the enzymes that break those down. So
mm,
getting that plant-based diet is so, so important. Getting those fruits and vegetables in every day,
enough fiber.
legumes, flaxseed is phenomenal for supporting the estrobolome. And a lot of people are anti-soy, but soy can be a great part of the diet. In general, legumes, but soy, chickpeas, lentils can also be very supportive. And the other thing, it's not just the estrobolome, it's getting enough fiber. So,
Right.
on average, we need a minimum of 35 grams of fiber a day just to prevent colon cancer. Our ancestors, if you look like 100 years ago and more, we're getting anywhere from 75 to 100 grams of protein a day. You look at people who are living in traditional environments still around the world, they're getting closer to that. The average American is getting about 15 grams of fiber a day.
Yeah.
Good fiber from all of those plants feeds, literally feeds those healthy microbiome that help your body to process and eliminate estrogen.
Mm,
And it also helps us to make those enzymes that help convert the estrogen. So it's a win-win all around. It also reduces inflammation. Inflammation affects our hormones. So many things interact and
yeah.
interrelate that way.
Yeah. What about like the estrogen related cancers, like breast cancer, for example? Is that impacted by the gut as well?
It is. In fact, we know that it's really fascinating. The microbiome, it's like we
That's
have so
really
many more
interesting.
questions than we even have
Yeah.
answers. It's been something I've been researching actually. I mean, as a hobby, I'm not a microbiome expert. I'm pretty
Right.
knowledgeable, but for like 30 years now, I went back recently and I found my first class. It was on overhead projector slides from the 80s that I had taught about women's health and the microbiome. I was shocked. I was like, oh,
I love it.
but now now we know so much more to the extent that we know
Mm.
that the breasts actually internally have unique microflora that influence estrogen deposits in the breast or estrogen receptors in the breast. And get this, the gut microbiome communicates and influences through chemical signals the breast microbiome. We also know the gut microbiome influences the liver detoxification pathways, which are the first critical step, even before the gut, of helping to bind and break down and eliminate those estrogens that then get passed into the gut that the microbiome works on. So we humans are so amazing. We
Yeah,
women are so amazing. And it's
truly.
really a matter of I think about health, women's health, with kind of two fundamental questions. What can I take away or remove that is aggravating or interfering with this woman's health in some way, right? Estrogen, endocrine disruptors, ultra processed foods, high levels of stress, bad relationships, whatever it is.
Right.
But also, what can I add to nourish so that we're kind of realigning with our primal blueprint of the way our hormones are supposed to work. And not that we can go in a time capsule or even romanticize, life in a different time, but how can we support the evolutionary nature of our biology
Mm.
in ways that it's meant to be so that we can get out some of the noise that's interfering with
What's
our,
just,
our
yeah.
adrenals, our thyroids, our ovaries, et cetera, our gut, all the things.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great way to put it. And you actually, just because I love your book,
Yeah,
you have those two questions in your book at the beginning.
I do.
That's like a big piece of like one of the things that I immediately in hormone intelligence took away. So
Yeah, I literally like when I'm
everyone go
sitting
read
with a
that.
patient after I've done my patient intake and I'm sitting with their note and thinking, okay, what's the protocol? Because I do
Right.
it individually for every patient. Like, what is it that is kind of overloading her system right now that I can help her to reduce the noise on? And what is she missing right now? It could be
Mm-hmm.
nutrients, it could be affection, it could be
Yeah.
rest, it could be time alone, time in nature, it can be anything that fiber that I can add in to support what her body is trying to do. And that is literally how I come up with my protocols.
I love that. I think that the fact that you do that, like everyone is so obviously everyone is so unique. And so you kind of have to, if you're actually a really good healthcare practitioner focused on.
Absolutely. And I know that, I couldn't see everyone in the world no matter what. And obviously, not everyone can come see me. So I
Yeah.
try to put as many of those protocols in my books and my courses as possible,
Right.
and my podcasts and my blogs to make them accessible to everyone.
As many people as possible. And
Mhm.
so there's two different stages of life that I want to go through because I think I have balloons
Oh,
coming on my Zoom.
did I give you balloons or did you
I
give
don't
me
know.
balloons?
I don't know how that came up.
I love that.
Because you support, in your protocols, you're supporting women through a variety of different stages of life, all the
Yeah.
way from, premenstrual through menopause and beyond. And so there are two different stages that I think that I really want to highlight because I personally get a lot of direct messages and listener questions about. And those two phases are menopausal and postmenopausal and postpartum. And
Mhm.
so let's start with menopausal. When we think about that group of women, what I get asked all the time, and I would love to hear your take on, is what do you think on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy?
Mhm.
Is this something that menopausal women should be okay with? Is it actually going to cause cancer? Like there's so many questions that women have. So give us your take.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of yes, yes, and yes, and then no, no, and no. So I think that one, when we think about bioidentical hormones, we're talking about hormones that either are the same as they are found in nature, but synthetically created or possibly derived from natural sources.
Mm-hmm.
The functions of those bioidentical hormones in the body are the same as the function of synthetic hormones. So I just want to state up front, I have had several women come to me in my medical practice who were put on bioidentical hormones by an integrative medical practitioner, functional
Yeah.
medicine, MD, whatever. And we're just kind of told, oh, well, they're natural. And I've had two women who I've had to take off of those hormones completely because they had abnormal uterine bleeding and their doctors were like, you need a hysterectomy. And one who didn't actually come to me as a patient, but she was consulting with me kind of informally at a lunch I had with a friend. A friend brought her along to ask her a question. I was like, but anyway, she had had that situation and she actually had developed endometrial cancer. And
Oh, wow.
her gynecologist who was doing the hysterectomy actually apologized. He's the one who put her on it and said it's from this. So I want women to really be aware that it's not like one is safe and candy and one is like harmful and the devil. They're
Yeah.
all potentially effective and they're all potentially equally harmful. The advantage of bioidenticals is simply it's a little bit like if you were to go to a big box store and
Mm-hmm.
buy a suit as a woman, or you were to go to a tailor and have that suit custom designed for your body. If you're going to go to get the bioidenticals, you can often have those titrated and formulated to your needs. Whereas the standard hormones, they come in a wide variety of doses, but they're more standard.
Sure.
So it's more one size fits all versus like that tailoring. And some women benefit really well from that tailoring. No, I do not believe all women need to take hormone therapy. And, we've evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. We have not needed hormone therapy all this time. And so people say, well, women didn't live as long then. But that actually historically, I mean, is generally true. But there were women who did live long lives into their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they were fine. And they weren't like crippled with osteoporosis and
Right.
completely demented, right? It doesn't work that way. So the way I use hormone therapy in my practice is for women who are symptomatic with symptoms that are indicated for using hormone therapy. So not all symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, like stress or hair thinning or changes in your gut microbiome or joint aches and pains, they're not all indications for using hormone therapy. Interestingly, neither is prevention of dementia. It may be that we get protective benefits from taking hormone therapy when we are in perimenopause and menopause, but it doesn't mean that we need that. There are other equally beneficial and totally zero risk ways of protecting our brains from dementia, like eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables that are anti-inflammatory, Mediterranean
Right.
style diet, getting adequate essential fatty acids in our diet, and avoiding all of the harmful inflammatory triggers that we're getting exposed to. There may even be a gut dementia connection. So
Mm.
all the good things that you would do for healthy hormones should actually protect you from heart disease, bone disease, and dementia. But if you're someone who has a really strong family history and it makes you very nervous, sure, if you don't have any contraindications and you want to do that, that's reasonable. If you do have bone loss, you have osteopenia or osteoporosis, that is an indication for taking hormone therapy, but it's not an indication to take it to prevent those. If you're taking it for
Mm.
hot flashes, vaginal dryness, night sweats, those symptoms, you get the added benefit of protection. It's also important to know if you're contraindicated from taking it. So, talking with your healthcare provider, your nurse practitioner, your family doctor, your gynecologist, your naturopath, if they're a licensed naturopath, and they're licensed to prescribe hormone therapy, which in some states they are. Talk about, your history. Is this indicated for you personally? And
Right.
then if you try it, see how you feel. If you have a uterus, you need to make sure you're taking estrogen and progesterone, not just the estrogen. So there are lots of nuances. But yeah, and then the form that you take it in can make a difference. So transdermal patches are the least absorbed into the system. So they're the least likely to cause cancer. Vaginal suppositories are next up. And then the highest risk is taking estrogen orally.
Orally.
Progesterone is best taken orally, but it can cause breast cancer. So having a baseline mammogram is a good idea. And, the other thing is that a lot of women get put on it, kind of like birth control pills. Women just get put on it. And then 15 years later, someone's like, do I still need this? Or I'm going to try to get pregnant. And so I want to come off of it. A lot of women just get put on hormone therapy and it's like, set it and forget it. And nobody's checking in 3 years, do they still have the symptoms? Do they still need it? Or can they come off of it? So,
Right.
don't just go on it and stay on it forever unless you need it forever, in which case then you do that.
Right.
There are also other things, like there are other medications, for example, that can be used, like for depression, anxiety, sleep problems, unless the sleep is being caused by hot flashes and night sweats.
Mm.
SSRIs are really a better indication. So Zoloft, Prozac, things like that. And then, of course, there's a whole wealth of natural options that you
I was
can
going to
draw
say
on.
all the herbs that you recommend in your
Yes,
books and stuff
exactly.
that people can test and try. But I feel like you covered the spectrum of everything I was looking for
Oh,
our
awesome.
audience, which is so great because not only are you saying like, yes, you can take them, but there's risk, but it's like you have to be taking it with progesterone. You should be getting a mammogram, like all of these things that women need to be thinking about if they're going to make this decision to ultimately go
Yes.
on
Have an
hormone.
ally, have a partner that, is a provider.
Yes.
I hear from women, oh, I've been taking it and my doctor just increased the dose and now I'm having vaginal bleeding, but I haven't had any periods in 2 years. Like, okay, that's not normal. We need to back that up and see what's going on. So make sure that you're just checking in with someone over time who really has your back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And
postpartum, what do you want to know about postpartum?
I
Postpartum to me and menopause are so similar.
see,
People
that's what I was
compare,
thinking. Like, I feel
yeah,
like these two groups of women are honestly the most like I don't know if this is the right word, but like marginalized, where it's like they're
mhm,
like doctors kind of ignore. It's like you're pregnant. Oh, like we want to take the. I feel like so taken care of in this
yeah,
stage. It's like after it's like we'll see you in 6 weeks. Nothing. Don't do
yep.
any of that. Like, and so I would just love to know from your perspective because you are also a midwife and like you have so much experience in this realm. You have a lot of great
I
articles
love postpartum. It's my probably my
on.
favorite time to help take care. I love the whole gamut, but there's
Yeah.
something really special about postpartum.
I feel like when women are thinking about this period of their life, my sister actually just had a baby 5 weeks ago. Like, what should they be thinking about? Like, in terms of do we need a support system? Like that things that
Yes.
we're not doing that we should be
Yes.
doing to make this transitional period easier.
Yeah. Even as the question was coming out of your mouth, my brain was going support, support, support.
Yes.
It's like ask for the help, plan for the help ahead of time, and let yourself bathe in the help.
Yeah,
And the help should be everything else so you can be with
the
baby.
baby.
And the help should be when you need to put baby down so you can take a shower or go
Mm.
poop by yourself. I can remember with my first baby. So my oldest is now at the time that we're having this conversation, he just turned 39. And
Oh,
I can remember being like this intense attachment parenting mom. My mom and my mother-in-law had no idea how to support me the way I was doing postpartum. My partner really did his best, but he didn't know. And he was working. So he went back to work a couple, like pretty much a couple of days after baby was born and like tried to take some lighter hours, but paternity leave wasn't even a thing at all back then compared to even now. And I had one of those little metal frame cloth baby bouncers. And I can remember like sitting on the potty pooping, bouncing the baby with my foot as if somehow like leaving the baby in the other room was going to do
yeah.
something traumatic, or trying to take a shower and opening the shower, talking to the baby who was in like a little baby carrier, like a car seat on the floor of the shower. Like, no, 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 no. Babies won't break from us stepping away from them, and we will be such happier, healthier moms. So, nourishing you, getting help that nourishes you and takes care of the other things. Let go of the mom guilt if you have older kids, make sure they're like supported and cared for by the favorite people in their life or your life so you can take care of yourself
Yeah.
and eat really well and stay hydrated.
Yeah, I think that that's great. I think that the fact that you brought up the mom guilt thing, just in my own practice, like with clients, I have clients who are in their late 30s, early 40s, even 50s, and it's like they have older kids, and it's like if they feel like the expectation is fully, and we talked about this at the beginning of the episode, fully on them to be the complete and total provider and caretaker. And like, one, that's not showing your child anything great, but two, it's like you have to fill yourself to be able to give to them from a place that's not burnout and reactive and
Yes.
stressed out and
Yeah.
angry. And I just
And
think
it's
that
okay. Like they're not
it's
going to break. I
okay.
would say I would add one thing too, what for postpartum
Yeah.
is that if you are, look, postpartum is all the feels. I mean, it is just all the feels. I think menopause and postpartum, like it's the two times in our life where we're going through these really extreme hormone drops.
Yes.
And postpartum, I mean, it's the biggest hormone drop in our entire life. And it happens basically in 3 days.
Yeah.
3 days.
I've been on the floor of my bathroom crying both times.
Yeah. That's happened to me in menopause too, actually. And yes, I almost did a video yesterday of like, one of those like, this is what I thought menopause would be like. And then I was crying and like, but this is what I'm really feeling like right now. But I didn't feel
Yes.
like doing a video right at that minute. I was like, no. But I was literally sitting on my bathroom floor, like, ooh. So the thing with all of it, like all of it, whether we're in puberty or pregnant or postpartum or perimenopausal or postmenopausal, but really, really, really important postpartum is there are going to be all the feels.
Mm.
But if all the feels feel like they're too much, right? And if you're not sure if it's too much, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, if you can pretty much say, I'm not sure if this is baby blues or not. Like if you're sure it's baby blues, it's baby blues. It's like the first, week you're like weepy and like, but you're still having joy and taking care of yourself. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, anything, do not wait to ask for help. There is no shame. You should be proud of yourself for asking for help. And I'm going to say this, and this is going to be a very scary statistic, but this is not well known and it's critically important. The biggest risk for maternal death postpartum is maternal suicide.
Wow.
Like, let's just sit with that for a minute. We have to ask for the help. So, look, it may turn out you're fine and you just needed the support. But if you're not sure or you're not feeling it, like you're not feeling
Yeah.
joy, you're not feeling like getting out of bed, you're irritable more than you would expect, or you're not sure, get help. Talk to your midwife, talk to your doula, talk to your OB-GYN, talk to your family doctor, but get a referral for someone who does perinatal mental health, someone who really specializes and knows how to support you.
I think that
And I
that's
know that we're
so
like all
helpful.
about all natural here, but
Yeah.
this is also like one of those times there's no shame in the game of if you need medication,
Yeah.
it's okay to do that. There are lots of other things that you can do, but do what you need to do to feel better.
100%. I think that they like just from friends that I've talked to who have gone through it and experienced it, because I haven't personally, and been in that place where it's like postpartum anxiety or full-blown postpartum depression. I think that there is so much shame in it. And I feel like this whole
Yes.
episode, like one of the really beautiful things that you've woven through every conversation is giving women the permission to ask for help, to ask their doctor for what they need,
Yes.
to ask more questions. I think that
And don't take that's just normal for an
for an
answer.
answer, right?
Don't take, oh, you're postpartum. Of course you feel this way. You're stressed, you're anxious, you're not sleeping. That's normal. Like, yes, and to a
Yes.
point, right?
100%. So yeah, I think that that's what I love the most about this conversation that we've had is that
Mm.
like I think a lot of women need that permission at this day and age. What
Yeah.
again, like whether it's permission to slow down or pause or take a break or ask their doctor more questions or not take no for an answer. And I think that this has been really empowering for our listeners. So
Oh,
thank you. One
thank
thing I do want
you.
to ask you is I know for me, I'm always interested in learning more. And I know you have courses for practitioners,
Mm.
courses for just regular run of the mill people. Can you tell us a little bit about besides the course that you mentioned for, our kids, what are some things that people can look into on your website?
Oh, yes. Okay. I love teaching. It's one of my favorite things to do and sharing everything I know that I can transmit so other people can go out there and like
Yeah,
one to many. So I have several practitioner courses, two
beautiful.
major ones. So I have a course called the Women's Integrative Functional Medicine Certification Program. It's a mouthful. That course only launches between June. Well, we're in launch now, so middle of May through September.
Okay,
And so you can only sign up during that time. And we're actually doing a launch sale right now. So reach out to me
beautiful.
through draviva at avivarom.com, or better yet, head to my website. That's going to be even better than reaching out to me. Go to courses, you'll see women's integrated functional, blah, 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 blah. Hit apply. You can get the application that way. So that course is a very comprehensive continuing medical education level deep dive into women's health in general across the board, everything from the foundations of nutrition, gut health, detoxification, metabolism, stress,
Beautiful.
adrenal, all the things through to like, I think we cover like 80 common conditions and symptoms. And it's
Wonderful.
all the integrative functional medicine approach. And also, I say, like, this is when pharmaceuticals are needed. That is open to certified and licensed health professionals. I have another professional course called Herbal Medicine for Women, which is evergreen. You can sign up for it anytime. But if you sign up for it between now and end of summer, we're going to be starting a cohort. So the course I
Oh,
just mentioned is
fun.
a cohort only, but Herbal Medicine, you can sign up anytime, but we're going to start a cohort group in late September, early October. And that is you can purchase it anytime, again, under courses. It's Herbal Medicine for Women. And but we are going to be doing a a sale on that in first or second week of June, and you can find out about that on my Instagram, which is just Dr. Aviva, or you can find out about by joining my mailing list opt in for anything free at my website. I'm not an obnoxious email sender. I don't do like a lot of sales emails or anything like that. But I do have a newsletter that comes out roughly every other week. I try to be gentle with myself about that. And then I do have the 28-day gut reset, which goes on availability periodically. It will be evergreen at some point and other things, but the two big things right now. And the herbal medicine for women is health professional level, but anyone can join that course to learn herbal medicine for all things hormonal, from menstrual health through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, into menopause. That course is focused more on the hormonal and botanical piece, whereas the other is everything. So, and that one's much more cost effective. So,
okay,
either one, they're both great. And some people do both of them.
I love that. I'm super excited because, like I said, I always want to be learning more. I've gotten a variety of different certifications myself, and I would love to do the one that's for practitioners. I think that would be so fun. So
join us. We have health coach. We have both courses have like extensive continuing education for nurses, health coaches, nutritionists, acupuncturists, naturopaths, on and on and on.
Amazing.
So,
and we can find you, I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but dravivaromm.com and on your Instagram at dravivaromm, just so everybody knows.
Exactly.
Amazing. So I'll link all of that out. I'll link the course that you're specifically talking about, both of them. So our listeners can find that.
Love to see some of you all in that.
They're going to love this. This is, I think a lot of people are going to really love the one that you were mentioning for their kids, because we have so many moms who are listeners. So there is so much content, and you provide so much amazing free content.
There's a ton on my website, both in articles and my podcast.
Yes. And then if you haven't yet read Hormone Intelligence, please go out and get the book, because when people ask me, where do I get started? That's where I point them to, because I love that book so much. So thank you for your time today. This has been incredible. We covered so much, and I'm just so grateful.
Total pleasure.
I really hope that you enjoyed that episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelly, or head over to our website, wellnessbykelly.com. Sign up now for the Wellness by Kelly 7-day free trial on our app, or head over to our course and now get 20% off the course or 10% off of the membership with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS. In our course, you'll get access to an emailed lab review plus protocols built out to help you heal with whatever hormonal imbalance you're struggling with. With our membership, you'll receive a library of content with our app with low impact workouts, blood sugar balancing recipes, and mindfulness meditations, all designed to help you balance your hormones and help you feel like you are living your most beautiful, joyful, and vital life. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review. That is the best way to help the show grow and get to more listeners. We hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next week.